All right, guys. So, well, first of all, welcome to the stream. I appreciate everybody for tuning in if they are. Um, I tweeted out earlier, I was just going to do, a little bit of a content piece, just pre-draft as the teams sit right now. If I had to predict who's going to be in the playoffs, these are who I think it would be. The teams I think that would be in the playoffs if the season started today, pre-draft, everything like that. So I'm going to dive into the NFC first because every 49er fan and their mother has already come after me. Thank you, Grant Cohn. So let me put them on the screen here, and I'll go team by team with my reasoning and whatnot. Tampa Bay, I mean, there's not much to explain with the Buccaneers. They got Brady back. They brought back Chris Godwin. That was a big question in terms of were they going to be able to bring back Godwin, especially with Brady being gone. It seemed like they were going to go through somewhat of a rebuild there. But no, I mean, Brady coming out of retirement, that gives them, that gave Chris Godwin a reason to come back. I mean, plus they're still stacked defensively, and they play in the worst division in the NFC, maybe the worst division in football. And you look at who they play. Again, we know all the opponents, don't know the order yet. The schedule will be released. I think when does it come out every year? I think like May or June. So you look at who they play. I mean, they'll play Atlanta, Carolina, New Orleans twice. They play Baltimore at home, the Bengals at home, the Packers at home, the Chiefs at home, the Rams all their toughest games are at home. So Tampa Bay, I mean, it couldn't have fallen any better for them. Yes, they play a relatively difficult schedule. I mean, like I said, they play Cincinnati, Kansas City, the Rams. They play both teams that are in the Super Bowl. On top of the fact that they play the Chiefs, Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay are never an easy out, but they get all of those at home. You look at their away games. Arizona, that'll be a relatively tough one, traveling across country. Cleveland should be a fun game depending on if when it falls in the year and if Deshaun Watson is suspended. Dallas, I think that they're better than Dallas. They'll beat Pittsburgh, and they should beat San Francisco. So, yeah, the Buccaneers, I mean, they have, if you look at it on paper, they have a difficult schedule in terms of the teams they play, but the vast majority of those games are at home. So Tampa Bay is my number one seed. The Rams, I mean, look, they've lost some depth pieces. I mean, they lose Darius Williams to Jacksonville, a plethora of others, but then they add Allen Robinson to an offense that already featured Cooper Kupp. So, I mean, throwing him in the mix with Matthew Stafford, Kupp, that's going to make for an even more dangerous offense. Van Jefferson as well is emerging as a really good, third option in that offense, which is why they felt comfortable trading Robert Woods away. And defensively, I mean, they add Bobby Wagner and create this tremendous all-pro big three of Aaron Donald, Wagner, and Jalen Ramsey. So, the Rams and an NFC West that's gotten worse. They've added some star power. And you look at their schedule. We look at, they'll play the NFC West opponents. So obviously Arizona, San Francisco, Seattle. I think they'll beat Seattle twice. A good chance they'll beat San Francisco twice. I know that the 49ers have kind of had the number of the Rams at least once a year. So I'm not going to San Francisco will still likely win one of those games, but the Rams to me are just the far better team right now. They play Atlanta at home. They get Buffalo at home. The Panthers, Dallas, Denver, Las Vegas, all at home. Their away games, obviously the in-division games, and then they go to Lambeau to face the Packers. They go to Kansas City. They go to the Chargers. They go to New Orleans and to Tampa Bay. So there's this kind of a flip script of the Buccaneers, really. I mean, they got a lot of tough games on the road. Got to go to Lambeau Field, to Kansas City. Depending on when those two fall in the schedule, those could be two cold weather games. And then going to the Chargers. Obviously, it's the same thing, but it's an away game. So, it'll be a 50-50 home slice for them. But, I mean, playing the Chargers, not going to be an easy game. This is a team that got better. New Orleans, I'm not a big believer in New Orleans. I think that they should be able to go in and win that game. And then to Tampa Bay. I mean, they went in and won in the playoffs last year. We'll see how the cards fall in the regular season. But regardless, it's not going to be an easy game. So I think that's kind of where figuring out the top two seeds fell for me, is just the fact that Tampa Bay has a tough schedule. They both, as do the Rams, they both do. Tampa Bay gets a lot of their toughest games at home, though, and that's a big win. Number three, Green Bay. I mean, I was hesitant to put them at 3, but you look at, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is still there. Detroit and Chicago, I mean, they're still kind of figuring things out, although I like the direction that both teams are going. I was tempted to put Minnesota as the division winner. I just think that right now they have a better overall roster than Green Bay. But I'm not going to bet against 12. I'm not going to bet against Aaron Rodgers. And you look at their schedule outside of the division. So, I mean, they'll host Dallas, they'll host New England, they'll host the Giants, they'll host the Jets, the Rams, and the Titans. And then their away schedule, they go to Buffalo, which will be maybe their hardest road test. I mean, they go to Tampa Bay as well. But those are their 2 most difficult road games outside of the division. I think that they'll split with Minnesota, but I think they'll beat Detroit twice. I think they'll beat Chicago twice. So, I mean, playing those 2, I mean, that to me, that's 4 wins right there. And I think they'll beat Minnesota once. That's 5. I think they'll beat Miami. I think they'll beat Philadelphia. I think they'll beat Washington. They'll beat the Jets. They'll beat Tennessee. I think they'll beat the Patriots. So, I mean, right there, that's 9-10 wins. So I think they'll win the division. Even though, they lose Devontae Adams, they still got to figure out what they're going to do in terms of a number 1 receiver because Marquez Valdes-Scantling's also gone. They really don't have any depth there. Expect them to go receiver heavy in this draft. Maybe bring in a guy like Jarvis Landry. Maybe trade for a guy like DK Metcalf, who's rumored to be on the trade market, and Green Bay is rumored to be interested. So if they can make a move like that, then great. They're right back in terms of being the elite teams. Right now, I don't think they're an elite team, but they have an elite quarterback defensively. They lose to Darius Smith to division rival Minnesota, which hurts. But overall, I mean, I think that, having Rodgers there, they're still going to be a force to be reckoned with. I do have the Commanders winning the NFC East. There hasn't been a repeat winner of the NFC East since, I believe, 2003 with the Eagles. I think it's the last time that happened in the NFC East. And look, Washington went 7-10 last year without Chase Young for the majority of the year. The defense played poorly in the first half of the season. They did it with Taylor Heineke. And, by the way, without Curtis Samuel, a big free agent signing for them. They add Carson Wentz, who is a big upgrade over. By the way, I know I've tweeted about this a ton. Don't come at me with Carson Wentz is a horrible quarterback. Carson Wentz is a bottom tier. Shut up. No, he's not. 27 touchdowns, 7 picks. Look, everybody wants to put Carson Wentz under a microscope when he does something bad. But whenever he plays well, a la against Arizona on Christmas, crickets. And look, if you want to keep saying, he played poorly against Jacksonville, you know who else played poorly against Jacksonville? Josh Allen. And Justin Herbert played horrible against the Texans. So where are the criticisms for that? Carson Wentz, I'm not making the argument that he's an elite quarterback. He's not. But he's a good quarterback. He's an above-average quarterback. And getting that value for Washington, trading, 2 third-round picks for that, for an upgrade over Taylor Heineke, in a division that is still relatively wide open. Now that they have a better quarterback, reintroducing Carson Wentz into the NFC East, which I cannot wait for him to go back to Philadelphia and dunk on them. But aside from that, I mean, they get Chase Young back from injury. I think that overall their defense, they started off slow. They started to figure things out in the second half of the year, which is nice to see. We look at their schedule. Atlanta at home, they'll beat Atlanta. I think they'll split with the Giants. I think they'll split with the Eagles. I think they'll go 3-3 in the division. I think they'll split with the other 3 teams. They host Cleveland. I think they'll lose that game. They host Green Bay. They'll probably lose that game. I think they'll beat Jacksonville, beat Tennessee, and have to toss up against Minnesota. And then on the road, they face the Bears on the road, the Lions on the road, the Texans on the road. I think those are all wins. Indianapolis, I think the Colts are a better team, but that one's still a toss-up. A revenge game for Carson Wentz the year after he spent the season in Indianapolis. And then they go on the road to face the 49ers, which I think they can give them a run for their money. So I have them winning the division. Again, a really good defense that was started off slow last year. They get an upgrade at quarterback, Curtis Samuel coming back, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, solid offensive line. They do lose Brandon Scherf to Jacksonville, so expect them to fill that need in the draft. But Washington, to me, I mean, overall, There's not too many like ginormous gaping holes on that team, and I think that they'll win the NFC East as of right now, at least in 2022. Number 5, the Minnesota Vikings. I already touched on them a little bit when discussing Green Bay, but they bring back Kirk Cousins. I know that was kind of a move that some fans loved, some fans hated. To me, Kirk is a fantastic quarterback. 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions last year. He's got 68 touchdowns over his last 2 years to only 18 interceptions. He's played fantastic. 4,000 yards in 6 of his last 7 seasons. Passer rating of at least 103 in his last 3 seasons. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. And by the way, and I don't mean to harp on the 49ers here because I know that fans have been blowing up my mentions on Twitter. Everybody came at me in the past hour or so saying, how could you leave the 49ers out of the playoffs? I mean, they got George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa. The Minnesota Vikings I think they have a better roster than the 49ers do. And guess what? They missed the playoffs too. They had a better quarterback last year than Kirk Cousins. He's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Shut up. They had a better running back, Dalvin Cook. They had better wide receivers. Deebo Samuel's fantastic, but Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson are one of the best wide receiver duos in football. You can make the argument that they have a better team than the 49ers do, and they missed the playoffs. Look, every NFL team has good players, guys. That's how it is in the NFL. There's good football players in the NFL on every team. I think that the Vikings this year, their offensive line has been problematic and their secondary has been problematic. They need to hit the last year, they drafted a lineman in the first round. Seems to be pretty solid for them. They need to keep attacking the secondary, first of all, because that's been a big problem. They address pass rush. They get Zadarius Smith to put with Danielle Hunter. That's scary. So secondary needs to be something that they focus heavily on. Looking at their schedule, again, the in-division games, Chicago, Detroit, Green Bay, I think they'll beat Chicago twice. I think they'll split with Green Bay. I'd watch out for Detroit. I mean, those two, for some reason, just seem to go back and forth and play each other really well. So Detroit might steal one from Minnesota. You look at the rest of their home schedule. They got Arizona. I think they're a better overall team than Arizona is right now. Plus, they brought back Patrick Peterson, which is good for them. Good veteran presence to have in the locker room in Minnesota. They play Dallas. I think they're a better overall team than Dallas. They play Indianapolis. That'll be a good game. They play New England, the Giants, the Jets. So, they'll have some good games at home. And then away, they go to Buffalo. I think they'll lose that game. I think they'll beat the Dolphins. I think they'll beat the Saints. I think they'll beat the Eagles. And again, that game against Washington is going to be a toss-up. But I think that the Vikings are a 9-10 win team, especially if they can get another piece in the secondary, maybe another piece up front on the offensive line. I really like Minnesota this year. And I would like to see Kirk Cousins get back in the playoffs. And plus, the way I have it sitting, that would mean that Kirk Cousins goes back to Washington for a playoff game. That would be exciting. Another playoff game for Kirk, and it's against the team that he started his career with and led to the playoffs. So Kirk Cousins, hopefully he can help lead them to the playoffs. Number 6 is the New York Giants. Now, this is the team that everybody's blowing me up about. How could I have the New York Giants in the playoffs? They went 4-13 last year. Guys, Mike Glennon was the quarterback for the New York Giants for the majority of last year. There was no team bitten worse by the injury bug than the New York Giants last year. It happens to at least one or two teams every year, but the Giants especially. And it seems to happen to them in back-to-back years because, they lost Saquon for the year 2 years ago. And then this past year, they lose Saquon for an extended amount of time. Daniel Jones goes down for an extended amount of time. Sterling Shepard, Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney. All of their impact players on offense were gone for a decent amount of time at one point or another. So there's a reason they went 4-13. But you look at what they've done this offseason. They hire Brian Daboll. They bring in Shen, the new GM, both of which helped turn the Buffalo Bills into what they are today, and that's one of the best teams in the NFL. And look what they did for Josh Allen, a guy who has a good arm, is mobile, can make plays with his legs. What's Daniel Jones? He's big. He's got a decent arm. He's mobile, and he can make plays with his legs. There's no reason why Brian Daboll can't turn Daniel Jones into a diet version of Josh Allen. No reason. And plus, you look at their schedule. Guys, they're playing a fourth-place schedule. Their defense held opponents to 22 points or less 9 times in 2021. The Giants won 4 of those games. And a lot of that was because Mike Glennon was there throughout a good portion of the year because Daniel Jones was hurt. They put up single-digit points, I think, on 4 different occasions last year. I have it pulled up in one of my windows here just so I can get it right. So let's see. 9 points against the Dolphins, 6 points against the Cowboys, 3 points against the Bears, 7 points against the football team, or now the Commanders. 4 times in which the Giants scored single-digit points. All of which Mike Glennon was the quarterback. Oh, and in those games, they scored 9 points against the Dolphins. Defense held the Dolphins to 20. Scored 6 points against the Cowboys. Defense held them to 21. Scored 3 points against the Bears. The Bears had 29 points, although I do think they had at least 1 defensive touchdown in that game. I think that was when, on like the first possession, the Bears returned a fumble for a touchdown, I think it was. That was the second to last game of the year. I'm pretty sure I'm right. I would have to go back and fact check that. But if I remember correctly, that's what happened. There was at least 1 Bears defensive touchdown in that game. And then final week of the year, they score 7 points against Washington. The defense holds to 22. The defense was not the problem in New York. It's the fact that their offense couldn't put up any points. Let's see how many times they scored less than 20 points, the Giants. Scored 13 week 1, 14 week 3, 11 against the Rams, 17 against the Chiefs, 10 against the Bucks, 13 against the Eagles, 9 against the Dolphins, 6 against the Cowboys, 3-7. 10 times the New York Giants scored less than 20 points in 2021. And again, chalk that up to bad coaching with Joe Judge, chalk that up to guys being injured. It is a new regime in New York. And look, I'm not sitting here saying that Daniel Jones is anything like crazy special. I think he's okay. I think he's better than average. I mean, you look at his rookie year, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. That ain't bad. And it's just the fact that he hasn't had any stability around him. And he's had a bad front office. And he's had bad coaching. You give him Brian Dable. You give him Wink. You give the Giants Wink? Come on now. That was probably the best assistant coach hire of the season to go along with a defense that's already been pretty solid. Brian Dable, Wink Martindale, I love it. I think the Giants are going to be good this year. I think they're going to be a 9-8 football team, maybe 10-7, depending on what. I mean, that would be best case scenario. But I think that the Giants are going to surprise a lot of people. The Giants, again, scored less than 20 points on 10 separate occasions in 2021. That's more than half their games. Were injured all over the offense. The defense was not the problem. They've upgraded everywhere in terms of coach, defensive coordinator, front office. They're getting healthy. There's no reason to believe the Giants can't compete for a wild card spot with the roster they currently have. And then after the draft, again, they got to fix the offensive line, which has been their biggest issue for the past 5 years. Expect them to do that, especially with the first, they've got 2 picks in the top 10. They might trade down a little bit, but still, I mean, they're going to be busy in the draft. So expect them to get better in the draft. I like the Giants this year, standing by that. And look, if I'm right, that's great. If I'm wrong, I'll own it. But the New York Giants, man, I'm high on them. High on Daniel Jones, high on Brian Dable. And I think that they can make some real noise in the NFC. Now, from this, they would face Green Bay. Hey, Giants, Packers in Lambeau Field. I believe this would be the 3rd time that's happened since 2007 because they beat Manning and Coughlin beat Favre in his final playoff game at Lambeau to go to the Super Bowl. They beat Rodgers in Lambeau Field to go to Super Bowl 40, which would have been Super Bowl 46 against the Patriots the second time. Now, after the boat ride, when they went to Lambeau again, they lost that game. That was the game where Odell had like a few consequential drops. The Packers won. But for the most part, the Giants have been successful against the Packers when they go to Lambeau Field. And we know that the Packers have been kind of bad in the playoffs the past decade. So that would be something to keep an eye out for if this is how it ends up falling, which, I mean, again, we definitely don't know. We'll find out in about 9 months. And then last in the NFC, the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals, I want to believe in them more. They don't give me a reason to. But at the same time, I think it's kind of the reverse thing for like Arizona. I believe in their offense a lot. It's kind of the reverse thing for the 49ers. Like, people are going to come at me because I have, Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury has choked. The Cardinals have choked down the stretch in the last 2 years, which, I mean, all are valid points. But, and this isn't a knock against Trey Lance per se, I think Trey Lance is going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. The question is when. If I had to say right now, no. He's played in how many full games since 2020? I think 2. North Dakota State had that one game as like some sort of, I can't even remember what it was. It was pretty much just an exhibition against another school. And then he got in for, a few plays against the Lions, one play against Green Bay. He played the game against Houston, struggled in the first half, kind of found his footing. Eventually played against Arizona. If I had to say right now who's the better quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo is the better quarterback right now. Like I said, Trey Lance, I think, is going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. But when will that be? Because that's the big question. Is it going to be week 1? If it's week 1, then great. Yeah, I think that, there'll be a playoff team if that's the case. I don't think it's going to be week 1. Because first of all, Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the roster. Off-season workouts are starting very soon. How long is Jimmy Garoppolo going to be on the roster for, first of all? And look, that's not to the fault of Trey Lance. That's to the fault of John Lynch in the front office. And I can understand wanting to get the most value that they can out of Jimmy Garoppolo. I can understand that. But when it hinders giving Trey Lance an entire offseason where he is the unquestioned leader, or he's the unquestioned starting quarterback, that's where I have a problem with it. And again, that's not Trey Lance's fault. But when is he, we don't know how good Trey Lance is. We can project all we want. All you 49ers fans can slide into my mention saying he's a mobile quarterback. He's going to fix this. He's going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. He's going to take more chances downfield. We don't know. That's the thing. We don't know. And we can project all we want. But the fact of the matter is we don't know. I know how good Kyler Murray is. I know how good the Giants' defense is and how good of working with quarterbacks Brian Dable is and how good of a front office personnel Shan is. We don't know about Trey Lance. We don't know. Now, again, I think he's going to be good. At some point or the other, I think he will be fine. Is it going to be week 1? I don't think so. There are going to be struggles throughout the first 5-6 weeks for the 49ers. Now, let's look at their schedule real quick. And I know, look, I have Arizona in the spot, and I don't want to harp too much on the 49ers, but I know a lot of the people who follow me are 49ers fans, so I just needed to address that, obviously. So let's look at what the 49ers schedule is. Obviously, again, in division games, I think they'll split with Arizona. I think they'll beat Seattle twice. I think there's a chance that they lose both times to the Rams. Now, again, I touched on it earlier. I know that Kyle Shanahan just seems to be able to have Sean McVay's number to an extent. So, I mean, there's a good chance that they do beat the Rams. I would not be surprised if they don't. And then you look at the rest of their home schedule. Look, the 49ers play the Chiefs, the Chargers. I think they'll beat Miami. I think they'll beat the Saints. They host Tampa Bay, and then they host Washington. They're not beating Kansas City. They're not beating the Chargers. They're not beating Tampa Bay. They're going to lose to the Rams at least once. I think they're going to lose to the Cardinals at least once. And then on the road, they'll beat Atlanta. They got Carolina, the Bears. I don't think they're going into Denver and winning. I don't think they're going into Las Vegas and winning. So, I mean, that's at least 7 losses. And look, by the way, I think that the 49ers are going to be hovering around that 8 to 10 win range, depending on how the cards fall. I don't think they'll be fewer than an 8-win team. But the Cardinals, I believe in their offense more. And it's because I believe in their quarterback more. Again, I know what Kyler Murray is. He's arguably the best dual-threat quarterback in football. He's got a rocket of an arm. He's a pain in the ass to game plan against. It all comes back to not knowing how good Trey Lance will be, and if he is going to be good, when that will be. Because, again, they're going to struggle. Now, depending on how the first 5 weeks fall, I mean, imagine if they've got, like, Kansas City, they'll get a game against the Rams and the Cardinals and, Denver in the first 6 weeks. I don't know if they win any of those. There's a decent chance if that's the case, they start off the year 2-4, 1-5. And look, that's not a knock against Deebo Samuel or George Kittle or Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, whoever the hell you want to say is on their roster. Again, every NFL team has a great player on it. 49ers have a few. I don't know about Trey Lance. I think he's going to be good at some point or the other this year, but when's that going to be? I don't think it's going to be week 1. I don't think it's going to be week 2, week 5. I think he's going to finally kind of find his stride between week 6 and week 8. And if that's the case and they're sitting there, if they have a bunch of those difficult games early on in their schedule, then they're going to be sitting around, 2-5, 3-4. They're going to have an uphill battle in a division where I think the Rams are going to win it again. The Cardinals are going to be competitive. And I just don't see them being better than a team like Minnesota. And I think the Giants are going to surprise a lot of people. Plus, Dallas is still going to be in the conversation. And people will point out, the Cardinals have lost Chandler Jones, which is a big loss to that defense. And I'm not saying it's not. That is a big loss. They cut Jordan Hicks as well. They've lost a few guys. But looking at their offense, their offense, when completely healthy, was one of the most explosive in the league last year. We already know how good Kyler Murray is. James Conner had a career rebirth. I think he led the NFL in touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins. And look, they missed time too. Kyler was gone for a little bit. DeAndre Hopkins is gone for a little bit. If that team stays healthy, remember, they were the last remaining undefeated team in the league. If they stay healthy, there's a good chance that they win the division. And if that's the case, then everything would have changed. But, obviously it didn't. But, it is fair to point out. And you look at all of the speed that they have. Hopkins, Rondale Moore, James Conner played fantastic. We'll see what happens with Andy Isabella. They lose Christian Kirk. That's a relatively big loss. I still got Zach Ertz there. Max Williams, solid tight end combination. And then defensively, yes, they've lost guys, but they still have J.J. Watt, who's performing admirably before he got hurt. Isaiah Simmons, Byron Murphy, Budda Baker, Zaven Collins, who they're really high on and drafted in the first round. So it's not that they don't still have guys on that side of the ball. They just lost their biggest one. And again, this is before the draft. Odds are they're going to add another piece. But as it sits right now, I believe more in the Cardinals than I do the 49ers. And look, remember, the 49ers barely got into the playoffs last year. Let's not act like the 49ers just tra-la-la-la-la'd into the playoffs. It came down to the final week. So, and I think that the 49ers have gotten worse as well. They've lost a good amount of depth up front. They haven't really made any moves to make themselves better. Arden Key is also gone. And the 49ers, what have they done to get better? If someone can answer that for me, if there's a 49ers fan there who can answer me, what have the 49ers done to get better? I will listen. But they haven't. And again, they barely made it into the playoffs last year. They might have gone to the NFC Championship game, which good for them, but let's not act like they just waltzed in like it was easy. It wasn't. As it stands right now, right this instant, I think that the Cardinals are a better built team. I believe in their offense more than I do the 49ers. And again, I'm not trying to slight Trey Lance. Let me say this so I'm perfectly clear. Trey Lance will be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. It's a matter of when he will, because right now he's not. At least we can't tell if he is. We just don't know because we haven't seen him enough. And in the games we did see him, he struggled. Didn't play great against the Cardinals. Struggled in the first half against the Texans. We just don't know. And now it looks like he's not going to even get a full offseason to prepare as the starting quarterback because of this whole Jimmy Garoppolo thing. I got nothing against the 49ers. Anybody who, follows me and whatnot knows that I'm basically an honorary member of that team's Twitter. But we don't know. And again, if Trey Lance is great week 1, then cool. I think they'll be a playoff team if that's the case. I just don't think he's going to be. I think it'll take some time. I think it'll take till around week 7, week 8, till he kind of really finds his footing and finds some consistency. And by that point, it could be too late. So that is my NFC playoff predictions before the draft, my way too early pre-NFL draft NFC playoff predictions. Now to the AFC, where this is how I see it shaping up in the AFC. We'll start with the defending AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals. People are pointing at their schedule like it's going to be daunting. Comparing both of their schedule from this past year, it's not much more difficult. You look at, they'll have Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. I think there's a good chance to beat Baltimore twice. I think they'll split with Cleveland. There's a good chance to beat Pittsburgh twice. They host Atlanta. They'll win that. They host Buffalo. That'll be a really fun game to watch. They host Carolina. They'll win that. They'll host Kansas City. We'll see if they can beat them for a third consecutive time. And then they host the Dolphins. Buffalo and Kansas City are by far the most difficult games there. Again, I think that they're better than Baltimore. I think they're better than Cleveland. I think they're better than Pittsburgh. Then they go on the road to face Dallas. I think they beat the Cowboys. I think they beat the Patriots on the road. I think they beat the Saints on the road. I think the Jets will be better, but I don't think they'll lose to the Jets again. Maybe. I'm high on Zach Wilson and what the Jets can do this year. I think that I think the Jets will be around that 7-win range where they'll be competitive, but they're still at least a year away. Maybe the Jets will surprise them. And then they go to Tampa Bay and to Tennessee. I think they're a 12-5 team, minimum 10-7. Baltimore isn't going to beat them twice, maybe once. I think they'll beat Pittsburgh twice. Oh, look, Buffalo, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, those are by far their hardest games. If they go 1-2 in that stretch, they're chilling. They are fine. Because again, let's say they lose to Buffalo and Kansas City or Tampa Bay and Kansas City, whatever you want to do. That's 2. I think they'll lose 1 or 2 of them. We'll just say 2 for the hell of it. I think they'll lose 1 to Cleveland, maybe 1 to Baltimore. They can win every other game. So 13-4 is a possibility for the Bengals. But again, this is the NFL. Every team will lose a game. Every good team will lose a game, at least one game that they shouldn't. So Cincinnati, 12-5. I think that's fair. Buffalo. Now the Bills, they've been busy, to say the least, over the past few weeks. Signing Von Miller. They let go of Cole Beasley, but then they replaced him with Jamison Crowder, who's a younger, better version of Cole Beasley as of right now. Crowder was hurt most of last year with the Jets, so, they kind of got him on a cheap deal. But when he's healthy, he's one of the best pure slot receivers in the league. Looking at Buffalo's schedule, if I can find it and pull it up, go to the top here. The Bills, I think they'll beat the Dolphins twice again. Dolphins haven't beat the Bills since Josh Allen has been the starter, if I'm not wrong, at least in the past 3 years. he has owned the Miami Dolphins. I think at least 3 of his top 5 passing performances, or 4 of his top 5 passing performances, are against the Dolphins. He's been the Miami Dolphins' daddy. I think they'll beat the Patriots twice. But I'm not going to completely rule out Belichick and what he can do. So I think I'll probably just give the Patriots one of those wins. So they'll beat New England once, I think twice. I think the Jets will surprise some people. I think they'll beat Buffalo once. They've been close. I mean, you remember a few years ago, the first week of the year when Le'Veon Bell was a Jet, they almost pulled it off there. That game in which Buffalo only won with field goals, I think they won 18-12. So the Jets have played them relatively well. Now, obviously, last year in New York, that was after the Bills lost to the Colts, where they just obliterated the Jets. So there is an exception, but the Jets, for the most part, have played the Bills really well over the past few years. So I think the Jets could surprise some people and steal one. And then they host Cleveland. Again, if that game's at home, I think that Buffalo wins, especially if the Browns don't have Deshaun Watson. They host Green Bay. They host Minnesota. And they host Pittsburgh and Tennessee. So, Green Bay and Cleveland are probably their 2 most difficult games at home. 2 of the most difficult games out of division, but they get those 2 at home. Really good chance they at least split those. On the road, I think they beat Baltimore. I think they beat Chicago. Again, Cincinnati will be a very fun game to watch. So, they could very well lose that. I think they beat Detroit. Then they go to Kansas City and then to the Rams. Those are 2 tough ones. So I think Buffalo is probably in the range of 11-6, still winning the AFC East. And look, there's not very many holes on this team either. They probably need another cornerback because they lost Levi Wallace to Pittsburgh. But they're really high on Dane Jackson. And look, if they want to bring in a veteran like a Joe Hayden, I think that would be a smart move to make. A guy who can go to a contender, bring a veteran presence and leadership to the locker room. Buffalo doesn't have very many holes. So I think that they're still by far the best team in that division. I think they win the division. Denver. Yes, the Denver Broncos. Look, the Broncos last year were 7-10. With Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. They dealt with injuries some themselves. You add Russell Wilson to a receiving core of Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, an offensive line that's gotten better. Defensively, there's not very many holes in that team either. Justin Simmons, Bradley Chubb. Broncos defense is fantastic. And offensively, they're going to be fun to watch. I think it's going to be a lot of fun in Denver this year. And how about the Broncos' luck just falling up into 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks in the last decade? Signing Peyton Manning, trading for Russell Wilson, everything in between has been crap. But good for them. And then you look at their hardest games are going to be in division. That's not even a question. And look, I think that they'll split with KC. I would not be surprised whatsoever if the entire AFC West just goes 1-1 against each other. Now, maybe the Chiefs go 2-0 against the Raiders. They dominate the Raiders constantly. So that wouldn't necessarily surprise me. But look, I think that they split with KC at least. I think that they split with the Raiders. I think they split with the Chargers. So that's 3 losses at least for them. But I think they beat the Cardinals at home. They'll beat the Texans at home. I think they're better than the Colts. They'll beat the Jets. And they're better than the 49ers. Right there, that's 8. I'm sorry, that's 5. I was counting the other ones. So right there, that's 5 wins. And then on the road, I think they're better than Baltimore. They'll beat Carolina, Jacksonville. The Rams will be a very tough game. And then Seattle and Tennessee. I think that's an 11-win team in the Denver Broncos. Their most difficult games will come in division. I think that at minimum, they will split them. At minimum, they will go 3-3 in the division. At best, 4-2, 5-1. Don't think they're going to go undefeated. If they do that, my God. But we'll see with Nathaniel Hackett, what he can do. New head coach in Denver. But I do like Denver to win the division. Number 4, Indianapolis. Adding Matt Ryan. This is their 5th consecutive year with a different starting quarterback at week 1 than the previous year. Good Lord. And they were 9-8 last year. Very close to being 10-7. We all know the story. I'm not going to get into it because I already did a little bit. I'm talking about Carson Wentz. Houston, Jacksonville, Tennessee in division. I think they'll beat Houston twice. I think that they will beat Tennessee at least once. Jacksonville, I think, is going to be a little better, so I think the Colts will go around 4-2 in the division. Then they host Kansas City. Don't think that they're winning that. They host the Chargers. I think that that'll be a tough game. I think they'll beat the Eagles. I think they'll beat Pittsburgh, and I think that the Washington game, I think the Commanders will push, at the very least, push the Colts to their limit. Then away, Dallas, Denver, Vegas, Minnesota, Giants, Patriots. I think overall they're a better team than Dallas. I think Dallas has better skill position guys, but defensively they're better than Dallas. Denver will be a good game. Vegas will be a good game. I think the winner of the AFC South will be around a 9-10 win team, similar to how it has been. It's not really a powerhouse in that division. But I think it is Indianapolis' time. Matt Ryan, probably a more consistent option than Carson Wentz. I'll definitely give him that. They need another receiver. I think that they'll draft one. Maybe they sign Jarvis Landry and plug into the slot with Michael Pittman. We'll see. But the run game is obviously very good. They got arguably the best running back in the game right now. I just need more skill position guys. They have a fantastic defense. So I'm liking what I see from the Colts. They're number 4. Vegas at number 5. I was very, very, very low on the Vegas Raiders last year, and Raiders Twitter let me hear about it. I'm not going to make the same mistake this year. I am hesitant, however, about Josh McDaniels. So if he lets me down, then I'm going to be pissed. Because I'm believing in you, Raiders. I am. See this pretty little smile? I'm believing in you. So don't let me down. Again, interdivision or within the division, it's going to be their toughest test of the year. They're going to do it 6 times a year. It's not going to be easy. But Arizona, I think that they're a better overall team than the Cardinals. Chandler Jones will get to face his old team. Then I think they beat Houston. They host Indianapolis, New England, San Francisco. I think that they'll beat the Patriots. They're better than the 49ers. They should win that game. Indianapolis will be a fun game to watch. Then on the road, division games, and then Jacksonville, they should win. The Rams, I think that they'll lose to the Rams. I think they beat the Saints. They'll beat the Steelers. And then Seattle and Tennessee, they should win as well. I think that the Raiders will be around a 10-win team and the top wild card spot. Kansas City, I think, will also be a 10-win team, and they'll be in that 6th spot. You can just kind of copy and paste what I've said about the rest of the AFC West. In a division where it's just been an arms race of talent, just fluctuating in, all of Kansas City's good players have been fluctuating out. They trade Tyreek Hill. That was and a lot of people say, oh, it's because of money, it's because of Patrick Mahomes' deal. I think a lot of it was just because they didn't want to have so much money tied up into a guy when he gets into his 30s at receiver. Yes, he's fast. Yes, he's a game changer, but they still have Andy Reid. They still have Patrick Mahomes. I think they'll be just fine. They add Juju, who's going to be, if they utilize him right, Juju's not really a downfield threat, but he is good intermediate underneath, catches a 6-yard pass and turns into a 9-yard gain. He's not going to go down at first contact. Marquez Valdez-Scaling will be there to stretch the field. And look, they're probably going to draft a receiver in the 1st round, or at least early. If they get a Jahan Dotson, plug him into the slot, they get a Chris Olave, a Garrett Wilson, someone like that. They added Ronald Jones to the backfield. So, they still got guys. Still have Travis Kelce. No, they don't have Tyrann Mathieu. They signed Justin Reed to replace him with, which, he's a fine safety. He's not Tyrann Mathieu good, but again, they didn't want to give big money to a guy who's in his 30s now, which you can understand. Defensively, they were horrible at the first half of last year, and then they turned things around. Credit to Spagnuolo just kind of realigning things to how they should be. Frank Clark, Chris Jones. This is still a team, a defense to be reckoned with. Willie Gay played fantastic. They do lose Travarius Ward to San Francisco. This is a team that's full of, how do I want to word this? Kansas City's defense isn't full of a ton of superstar guys, but the way in which, Steve Spagnuolo has them playing, that's where they get you. Willie Gay played fantastic. Frank, I already touched on everybody. But I'm not going to bet against Andy Reid. I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes in terms of not making the playoffs. I think they'll make the playoffs. For the life of me, I'm trying to think of the linebacker's name from Missouri who I was so high on coming out of the draft. So let me actually look at their depth chart because it is going to piss me off. Because Nick Bolton, that's his name. Nick Bolton. Also fantastic part of that defense. So yes, Kansas City, again, around a 10-win team, getting into the playoffs. And then the Chargers, look, I know that everybody drinks the Chargers Kool-Aid every year, myself included, and they always seem to let us down somehow. This year's got to be different because they traded for Khalil Mack to put on the other side of Joey Bosa. They signed J.C. Jackson. They bring back Mike Williams, which is something that not a lot of people thought that they were going to be able to do. Keenan Allen's still there. Austin Eckler's still there. There's not many holes on this team, and yet somehow they messed around and missed the playoffs last year. It's unthinkable. Again, hardest games will be within the division. At home, they host Jacksonville. They'll win that. They host Tennessee. They'll win that. The game against the Rams will be a toss-up. They'll beat Seattle. They'll beat Miami. And then on the road, again, division games. And then on the road to Arizona, that'll be a difficult game. They'll beat Atlanta. On the road to Cleveland will be a tough game. They'll beat Houston. Against Indianapolis will be a tough game. I think they beat the 49ers. I think that every team in the AFC West will win 10 games. I think that the Broncos will win 11. That's what will put them over the top. And all 4 teams will be playoff teams. And then it just becomes a war of who's going to make it out of the AFC. Look at the quarterbacks that would be in that, by the way. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. 5 of the best quarterbacks in the league, all within the AFC, all duking it out in the AFC playoffs. And plus, Derek Carr has emerged as, at least a top 12 guy, and Matt Ryan is, still a good veteran who still has some juice left. Now, for the playoffs here, it will be Buffalo hosting the Chargers. Yes, please. Inject that into my veins, especially how cold in Buffalo. We'll see how the Chargers adapt to that. Denver hosting the Chiefs for the 3rd time on the year. That would be a fun game to watch. And then Indianapolis and Las Vegas. In Indianapolis, I think that would be a fun game to watch. Especially because you look at what the Raiders have done. I mean, they add Chandler Jones, they extend Max Crosby, still have Josh Jacobs and Darren Waller there, Hunter Renfrow. I mean, they've got some guys on that team as well. But yeah, man, the AFC is going to be a dogfight. The NFC doesn't get as much love because, the power and the quarterback, the best young quarterback talent is by far in the AFC. But the NFC, it's still got a lot going, and it'll be competitive as well. All the attention will still be on the AFC, though, which, is kind of understandable when you look at who the quarterbacks are. But yeah, those are my pre-draft way too early playoff predictions. Glad I got a lot of that out of the way. So yes, I'm going to tweet a little bit of the thread, especially about the 49ers stuff, just because I know a lot of people were angry about that, is what it is. I'll tweet that out. Follow me on Twitter at JBaileyNFL. I'm going to try to upload to YouTube a little bit more, try to get, stay involved with it and keep up with it. But yeah, I appreciate everybody who tuned in. Yeah, at JBaileyNFL on Twitter. We'll keep doing this a little bit more as time goes on. So see you in the next one. And yeah, there's a lot of fun. Try doing this as much as I can. So till then, we'll see you.